You're listening to Newshour. Well, the Nice attack does raise the question again, why would someone do that? Islamic State, so-called Islamic State, has not said it ordered the attack, not this specific one, but it has in general terms said that France should be targeted, along with others. In September 2014, a spokesman for so-called Islamic State, Abu Mohammed al-Adnani, said, if you can kill a disbelieving American or European, especially the spiteful and filthy French, or an Australian or Canadian, or any other disbeliever from the disbelievers waging war, including the citizens of the countries that entered into a coalition against the Islamic State, then rely upon Allah and kill him in any manner or way, however it may be. The US put a $5 million reward for information leading to Mr. Adnani's capture. In January this year, he was injured in an airstrike. But again, why is France considered filthier, as he puts it, than other European countries? French-Algerian journalist and writer Nabila Ramdani joined me earlier. Why France?
Well, it's a very difficult question, but certainly Al-Qaeda-affiliated group and so-called Islamic cells as well have been threatening France for years, and they put forward a reason for those threats. France's hawkish foreign policies and its involvement in its fight against global terrorism in countries such as Mali, Syria and Iraq. And it has to be said that François Hollande made it his foreign policy to tackle those violent extremist groups, and he has been relatively successful in countries like Mali, for example, and he's been particularly keen before anybody else to tackle the problem fully in countries like Syria and Iraq. So he made it clear that he wanted to eradicate those groups, even if it took France to do it single-handedly almost. So I guess it's that kind of pushback from those groups to make France a particular target.
Well, that does make sense. But to what extent also is it to do with the internal situation in France, that there are people who are alienated enough to do it?
That is, in my view, the most fundamental problem. The background and indeed the profiles of those who have been perpetrating terrorist attacks in Paris, the Nice attack, the Paris attacks last year, all those involved came from a depressingly predictable background, French, of a North African background, often involved in armed robbery, drug dealing, criminality essentially. Most of them were meant to be in prison or under constant surveillance. They were known to the French authorities, and yet they managed to get hold of weapons and escape hapless intelligence services. These are the kind of people who have been radicalized mainly online and indeed in prison, and who, in their own words, had nothing to lose and went on to carry out the most evil of deeds. So it's very much a problem at home, and the Prime Minister Manuel Valls has often highlighted this domestic problem. He spoke of the social, economic and territorial apartheid in France, which divides communities.
But does that open up the possibility of some political solution to this, in that if that higher levels of integration are achieved, that might help resolve some of these problems?
One shouldn't overlook the very important security aspect to that. There has to be a security approach to preventing those attacks. And in fact, a parliamentary report investigating last year's Paris attacks has just been released, highlighting global failings and insisting on the creation of a new agency, a US-style agency, in order to counter terrorism. So there's admittedly very real security failings by the French authorities. Having said that, there's also, as you said, a political solution to these problems. And I believe that more integration, more opportunities, more inclusion of those communities would go a long way into preventing alienation and the feeling of stigmatization as well.
And that was Nabila Ramdani.